Welcome to the Cynthia Manion Show. I'm your host, Cynthia Manion, and tonight we're talking about reinvention, resilience, and the power of helping others tell their stories. Yes, imagine leaving a 28-year career at the very top of your game as Senior Vice President of Operations for Coldwell Banker, as you know, one of America's most prestigious real estate brands. And now imagining building not one, but two entirely new successful careers from scratch. Yeah, our special guest tonight did exactly that. She became known as America's LinkedIn lady, and this is before LinkedIn was really a thing, producing over 650 radio shows and reaching millions of people with her expertise in social media and professional networking. Today, she's the executive editor for the Mark Victor Hansen Library. Yes, that Mark Victor Hansen from Chicken Soup for the Soul. And she's been directly responsible for launching just over 100 books in just 4 years. Can you imagine? Yeah, that's a lot of work, a lot of dedication, a lot of details. She's a writer, a consultant, a speaker, and a champion for entrepreneurs who want to get their message out to the world. Her journey is a masterclass in being adaptable, having courage, and having the power of following your purpose. So please join me in welcoming the remarkable Carol McManus to the Cynthia Manion Show.
Oh, Cynthia, that's fabulous. Thank you so much. I was wondering who you were talking about during the introduction.
Oh, Carol, it is you.
It's been a journey.
So fabulous to have you on the show. You look terrific.
Thank you.
I have known Carol, and I was just thinking 7 to 8 to 9 years now. I started working with her in, I guess, the early 20s. And I officially met her in 2022 at an event that she ran, the Milford Readers and Writers Festival. So we have a couple of fun pictures from there. Here's my ticket from that event, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
It was quite a wonderful thing. And I went and stayed up in a hotel that you recommended, Tom Quick. It was enchanting and old and had a ghost in the other room. And the whole area was just a charming little town. If you haven't been to Milford yet, are you still doing those festivals?
Yes, we are. We're already starting to plan 2026.
Oh, so guys, if you're in the area,
last year was our 10 years. So we're going on number 11 is this year.
Wow. Hi, Robert. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate your support. And here she is in action, supervising behind the scenes. And this is at the festival in 2022. Where it is quite a thing. There's a whole place where all the authors meet afterwards, and you get your book signed. You can buy your books. You can meet people. I think there's a few pictures here of this is an author that I met, Nelson DeMille, and I just found out today that he's passed. Carol, tell us about him and some of the other authors that were there.
Well, in 2000, every year we have a headliner, and we've had some amazing people. We've had Gloria Steinem, we've had Lee Child, we've had Alan Alda, and others, Harvey Fierstein. We've had some great lead authors, but Nelson was in a class of his own. First of all, I've been a fan of his for years. I've read his books for years. When he was with us in 2022, he had his son with him because it was the first time he and his son had co-authored a book.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting story about father-son working together and how different their styles were. But he really is, he was an incredibly creative individual and very generous with the audience, because the way we do this festival, it's really quite different than some other writers and publishing and, readers and publishing festivals, because we try to make it intimate. It's a nice little theater in Milford, Pennsylvania. We have about 300 seats, and we really want the audience and the authors to be in conversation. So besides, about a 45-minute presentation from the stage, they get to meet them and you get their book signed and talk to them afterwards and chat. And he was very, very open and generous. And a lot of people who knew his stories, and a lot of them were based in the Northeast, so there was some affinity with that. But he did have some health problems. We didn't know it then, but he had them at the time. But he passed away, I want to say last year, and when I say last year, I really mean 2024, not 25. So it was sad to leave him, but his son is carrying on his legacy and going to be writing more books. So pretty cool.
That is so cool. You've met amazing authors. Who else have you met that?
Oh, God. We could spend the rest of the hour just talking about the authors. But if anybody is interested, because we're already planning for the 2026 festival, this is always in September. And Milford, Pennsylvania is just a sweet, sweet town to visit. It's the second weekend, or actually third weekend, maybe in September, like the 18th, 19th, I want to say, or look on your calendar. It's that weekend. So we don't know who our headliner is this year, but there's a whole archive there. So if people are interested in the types of talent that we've had in the past, I named a few. We try to go for variety of both topic and interest, everything from biographies to historical fictions to straight fiction to memoir. We want to appeal to a very, very broad audience and really bring readers and writers together, because the older I get, the more I realize, Cynthia, how really critical the written word is, because that is, for every one of us individually and for the world at large, that's our legacy. Whatever is going on in your life, in your head, in your heart, you put it down on paper, and that's something you're leaving behind for generations to come. And, people get discouraged. There's a lot of competition out there, but there's a place for every book, and every book has readers, and you just have to find your readers.
Yes. Or your publisher.
Or your publisher.
Or your light to get you through. Because that's how I met Carol. She was the backbone behind getting my 2 books that are available on Amazon and helping me get them to be Amazon bestsellers.
Absolutely.
So these are available on Amazon. And I also had a wonderful time last year doing the audibles for both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it's 2025. This one is also available now in Spanish.
Yep. Both ebook and audiobook. So it's wonderful.
So we had a great time working together. But let's get back to 2007. You're the Senior Vice President of Operations at Coldwell Banker. And after 28 years, like when most people are going to just ride into retirement and not live their legacy, you said, it's time for me to do something completely different. So what made you do that?
Well, it's a great question. But if people are tuned into economics and they roll back that clock of what was happening, not so much in 2007, but in 8 and 9, that was when we went off the economic cliff, if someone will remember. And what was happening with me, we had already started, again, being a large company and part of a larger company with 5 brands. The 5 brands combined owned about 25% of the national market at the time. Every listing or sale in the United States. So we saw trends long before others necessarily saw them. And we could see that the bubble was about to burst, because real estate had been in a bubble for almost a decade. And what was happening was we were downsizing by attrition, by, sort of, I called it picking feathers off the duck, eliminating cubicle positions. And I really had a very, very blessed career. I did a lot of wonderful things over those 28 years, and I will always be eternally grateful. But I realized that if the company was at some point going to have to make some very, very tough decisions. So I went to my boss and said, I want to put my name on the list, because when you have to, at some point in time, the big guys in the corner office are going to ask for some serious payroll to be cut here. And I want you to know I'm okay if you put me on that list. And he freaked out. Because he and I had been friends for most of that 28 years. And he had fought very hard to get me to the corporate offices from other positions I had held. And long story short, it's not an important story, but when the time came and that they knocked on his door and said, okay, you got to get serious now. He said, did you mean what you said? And I said, I absolutely did. And I had already started to put a plan and an idea together that I wanted to be a coach and consultant and use part of the skill set that I had built up over those years to really be on my own. So I was totally okay with it. And it was most people, trudge to the parking lot. I danced to the parking lot, not because I was unhappy with the job, but because you said it, Chris, Cynthia, it was because it was opening up the chapter to a new part of my life. And I was still young enough to say, hey, you know what? I can have another career here. Now, what's really funny, and this really, when the cliff came and the economy fell apart, I had a very strong skill set in coaching and consulting. I was a certified executive coach and life coach. I'd done obviously a lot of things in the business world, pretty much every seat, franchisee, franchisor, company owner, operations, training. I mean, there wasn't pretty much anything I hadn't done. But when everybody else was being downsized in 2008, everybody was a coach or a consultant. And I was transitioning out of, an industry that I had been in for a very, very long time, but my skills were agnostic. So, but I also didn't have a network outside of that because I had been in this cocoon for a long time. So a friend of mine said, Carol, you need to be on social media. And I said, great. How do you spell that? And again, put it in perspective. The only two players, LinkedIn was there, but it really hadn't gotten big traction. And then the other two that were in competition this is 2008, was MySpace and Facebook. And MySpace was the #1 social media site. So again, I want to put this in perspective for people. So I followed my friend's advice. I got on every social platform out there. I started, networking and just sort of bumbling my way through because nobody was teaching us how to use it for business. There was a lot of be on Facebook and share, pictures of the grandkids, but there wasn't a lot for business. So what happened was I gravitated naturally to LinkedIn because my consulting business was in the B2B. And if you don't know that phrase, it's business to business space, as opposed to business to consumer, which would be retail and, restaurants, those kinds of things. But I was in the business to business space. And that's where a lot of my peers from over the years hung out. So I very quickly built my business because I had one goal, and that was to replace my income in the first 12 months. And it was substantial income. LinkedIn did it for me. And just to share a quick war story, and this is not to brag at all, but to encourage people of what's possible. One of the people I reconnected with was someone that I had worked with at Coldwell Banker. We were in different roles, but we knew each other back in the very early years. We're talking the early 80s. I had not talked to the man in 25 years. I saw him on LinkedIn and we just sort of hey, I just wanted to catch up. This is what I'm doing now. How are you? Well, it turns out he was a consultant in Southern California, which is where he had always been based. And he says, let's get on the phone and catch up, which we did. And in the course of it, as he was learning what I was doing and of course, knowing what I had done over the years, he said, Carol, I have a proposal for you. He says, because he had a very successful consulting business in Southern California, but he said, I don't travel anymore. If it ain't in Orange County or maybe Los Angeles, if it's a really important client, or San Diego, he says, I don't take it. He says, I have a client with a division in New York, in Manhattan, who really has been begging me to take this job, and I have no interest in it. He says, if I refer it to you, would you pay me a referral fee? And I said, of course I would. So he made the introduction. I got in touch with this client, and I'd been on my own now, probably maybe 3 months, maybe 3 months. It turned out to be a 6-month, $50,000 engagement. I paid him a 10% referral fee, which is what he asked for. He was thrilled. And that was a substantial piece of how I got my business started because it gave me that ground, that footing. Mm-hmm. But what was so amazing to me was it was reconnecting with somebody from my past who I, again, hadn't talked to in 25 years. And we reforged the relationship, built the trust again, made a referral, and it turned into real business. So I really then sort of let the other social media sites sort of take their place, but my focus was on LinkedIn, not only for myself, but also I was beginning to do speaking. I was living in Fairfield County, Connecticut at the time. And I was live networking at the BNI chapter, a Business Network International. And I was going to local networking events. And what was happening was I was looking for business to consult in to help them I was focused on small and medium-sized businesses. And people were saying, yeah, that's nice. I don't need you as a consultant. Teach me about this LinkedIn, or teach me about this social media stuff. So I realized there was a whole new opportunity here. So I was invited to speak at a conference through another connection in in Las Vegas. And this is a funny story too, about how brands can find you as opposed to you finding a brand. I was in the ladies, I had been on stage and I was talking about social media for business. This was a professional audience, and gave some tips on what to do and how to basically network online if you're not at a BNI meeting or going to the local chamber meeting.
Mhm.
And I was in the ladies' room afterwards washing my hand, and this woman turned to me. She couldn't remember my name to save my life, but she pointed to me and she says, "Oh, you're the LinkedIn lady." And it was like, ding, 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 ding. So I ran to the phone. I picked up the phone and called my coach. And I said, "What do you think about this?" And he says, and he starts Googling it and said, "You found your brand," because nobody is owning it. Because you had Mari Smith, who owned Facebook at the time. You had Guy Kawasaki, who owned Twitter at the time. These were like the big voices teaching people about those sites. Nobody was teaching people how to use LinkedIn. So that evolved into more speaking opportunities. It evolved into the radio show, which I started in Greenwich, Connecticut, and then went national, actually global, through internet radio, and did a lot of speaking. And that was a good 10-year run of helping people build their social media. And then as all things come to an end, it wasn't because I didn't love doing it, but by then the world had matured and people knew more about what they were doing. And I was following other opportunities, which we can move to that in a few minutes, but that led and opened the door to what is now my third career. So that's the whole story about social media. But I thought the history lesson of what the world was like in 2008 would be amusing to people, because we forget.
And relationship capital.
And relationship capital, which continues today to be probably, I think, my greatest asset, because and anybody's asset, not mine. It's not about me. It's just, you really have to think about who you know. And the beauty of LinkedIn, it's not just who you know, it's who they know. And that's what really matters.
See that LinkedIn? You might want to take this little piece and use it for your advertising, because the woman said it. And talking about capital relationships, and we've got Tim Gillette here, who said, "Oh my goodness, it's Carol. This is awesome treat to see you both together." Hi, Tim. Thank you for joining.
There's another name from the past. Hi, Tim.
It is so fabulous. It's a small, small world.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And remember all your friends and all your lessons that you learn from them, and, reach out. If you reach out to like 5 people a day, keep that relationship capital growing and growing and growing. So when you decided to launch your own coaching and consulting company, did you have a clear vision, or were you figuring it out as you went at that time?
Oh, I had a very, very clear vision. I wanted to really, again, this goes back to the years of experience that I had with Coldwell Banker, because I was on both the franchisee and the corporate owned side over those years. Mm-hmm. And working with franchisees is a privilege that I think everybody should have once in their lifetime, because they invest in a franchise. And when I say a franchise, Coldwell Banker, had a franchise division. Century 21 had a franchise division, but you've got Jiffy Lubes and Subways, and there's all sorts of franchise opportunities out there. And what you're buying is the right to use the brand and have that sign above the marquee, which gives you, instead of Joe's Burgers, you have, Subway, working for you, or it could be a Pizza Hut franchise. But but you're still your own business owner. You're a small business owner with all of the same aches and pains. You have to pay the rent. You have to meet the payroll. You have to be a manager and a leader and a janitor and all of those other things that go into it. And what I learned from our franchisees in particular, and our broker owners over the years, was there was such an appetite for growing, because you're not in business to lose money, you're in business to make a profit. And I knew how to do that. I had done it successfully as an operating officer in Hawaii, and turned a $200,000 loss into a multi-million-dollar commitment very quickly. So I knew I had the bones and the skills to do that. But also I had seen others, ebb and flow and do good things and bad things. So I really wanted to focus on that small entrepreneur market who wanted to take their business, it's a tired phrase, but take their business to the next level. So that was my passion. That was my vision. I wanted to, so I was in, I would say, the $2 to $20 million range. And for business people who are listening to this, that was my core target. And it was not necessarily in real estate, But again, because of my background and because of the way relationships work, I tended to specialize in the service industry. So it became insurance and law and medical. I worked with doctors and dentists and of course, real estate companies over the years. So as I was doing that, that's how it all grew. And as often happens when you're in the service business, again, relationships, one thing leads to another and leads to another and leads to another. So other than social media, I never spent a dime on advertising, but my radio show was a big part of my promotion and those kinds of things. But it's finding your niche and having that focus of what you really want to do.
Perfect. So you produced over 650 episodes of that LinkedIn The Lady Show.
Yeah, it was the LinkedIn Lady Show for a long time. And then in the last year and a half, we added a second show. I actually teamed up with a former colleague of mine who was the one who taught me how to spell social media. His name is Ken Herron. And he had moved on to another career, but he was even more of a specialist in social media. He was the Twitter king. And in fact, one of the top 10 go-to marketers back in the days when Twitter used to give those designations. And so Ken and I created a show called Social Solutions because at that point, we realized as social media was growing and expanding, it wasn't just about LinkedIn. So I had 2 shows going for a long time and really amazing guests, specialists in the market, just like you, Cynthia. I mean, you know the joy of doing this and helping people bring their message and asking curiosity questions, which kept me on my game as to what was going on, but it also helped them promote their business or their book or their coaching program or their events, whatever it was. So I really loved doing that. But again, all good things come to an end. And it was like, okay, it's time to retire that and move on to something else.
But that's extraordinary. And it is so true. What's one conversation perhaps from all those 650 shows that completely changed your perspective on networking or business?
That's a really, really good question. I'm going to give big chops to a name that's probably familiar to some of your listeners. His name is Eric Qualman, and getting him on the show was a big coup because he was a big deal. His show stood out to me because he really not only taught my listeners, but he taught me and again, it's a tired phrase, but thinking outside the box and looking for opportunities and always the curiosity, I believe, was one of his key words. At least that's what I remember. And I was doing those things, but I was doing them sort of unconsciously, and I became more consciously aware of that. So I would probably give him credit. But there were so many wonderful guests, so many that I couldn't even name them all.
Can you share a story about someone that really transformed their business through LinkedIn and what they did to make a difference?
Oh, God. Again, I've got many stories, but I have one person who came to me. I met him at a speaking engagement. He happened to be in the Connecticut area. We were in Las Vegas at the time, or maybe it was Los Angeles at an event, but he was in my backyard. So he became a consulting client, and he was one of the people who, I'm not going to be on social media. I'm not going to put myself out there. So he came kicking and screaming. I said, look, I want you to ignore everything else, because in those days, this was even before Instagram came about. So it was Pinterest, which was for the ladies who wanted to share recipes and wedding pictures, those kinds of things. And I don't mean to degrade Pinterest. It had a great spot in this, but it was a very unique spot in the social media space. Twitter, which drove most people crazy because it was too chaotic and they couldn't manage it and felt they needed to be on it all the time. Facebook, which had already begun to transition away from the college market, the hookup market, which is, if anybody remembers, that's where it started. It was for the boys, Mark and his friends who established it so they could hook up with girls in college, and then it evolved into something else. But the youth market had moved away from it. The business market was beginning to take over, but it really had changed the chemistry of how it was being used. And business wasn't really, if you were in the B2C business or the relationship, like social club kind of thing, like readers groups and moms groups, that was working on Facebook. But again, this person that I'm thinking about who really did transform his business was pure B2B. I don't want to give too much away because I don't want to compromise him or his profession. So I'm not even going to say what profession it was, but he was in the professional space and kicking and screaming. And I said, I want you to focus on one thing and one thing only, and that's LinkedIn. And he did. And he had a personal goal before I ever came into the conversation. He had a personal goal to bring 2 other people into his business within a year so that he could begin to build a plan for retirement. And he quadrupled what had been his goals for growing the business in 12 months because of relationships, because he had forgotten how connected he was. He went to a very prestigious college. Like many of us, had lost touch with the people, and that's where we started. And it was just through reconnecting with people that he knew in college, and then it grew from there, and it exploded. It exploded.
So, as you said, social media has changed so much since then. What core LinkedIn strategies from your LinkedIn Lady Days still work like magic today?
I would say the basics. What still works is if you really treat it as your personal, and I'm going to use a phrase that's going to freak a lot of people out, and it will betray my age. It's your Rolodex, okay? For those of us who remember that little thing we used to have on the credenza with little cards on it with people's contact, your LinkedIn connections are your personal Rolodex. And this is the image that I used to plant with people, is the difference is when you walked into somebody's office and you saw the Rolodex on their credenza behind them, because they're sitting at their desk, you were curious as to who was in that, who was on those little white cards. When you go to LinkedIn and you connect with people where you have that first degree separation, you are getting into their Rolodex, because you can say, oh my God, Cynthia, you know Joe, whoever, and I have wanted an introduction to him. Would you mind making an introduction? Now, you and I already have a relationship, and you're going to say, of course, I'll make an introduction. How can I help you? So it's that personal connection of getting connected to other people through connections. Now, what I'm going to say, what I don't like about how LinkedIn has evolved, I think it has, unless you manage it yourself, it has moved away from that as a platform. And I understand why. It's a pure business thing. It has had to compete with the other social media platforms. So it's become very salesy. And I will tell you that it really angers me when somebody sends me an invitation to connect. And when I was speaking a lot, I accepted most invitations, because even though I may not have known them, if they were in an audience of 300 or 400 or 500 people, but they wanted to connect with me, I wanted to encourage that, because it was part of my business and my brand at the time. I don't do that anymore. But what has happened now is you get an invitation and say, oh, I'm friends with Cynthia, I'd like to connect on LinkedIn. And you connect, and 30 seconds later, you get the email about, oh, I want to sell you my newest widget.
I know. It's horrible.
That is not the purpose of LinkedIn. And the people who abuse it that way, or not that it shouldn't be used as a sales tool, it should. But again, I'm an old fashioned in my thinking. To me, it should still be professional protocols. The same thing you would do if you went to a chamber meeting or a BNI meeting, or you went to a church social and you wanted you saw the mayor of the town walk in, and you didn't know the new mayor, but the person you were having a glass of wine with did, and you asked them to introduce you. To me, if you want to keep that spirit of LinkedIn, and if you keep that spirit yourself and you encourage the other people you connect with, then you've got it still remains the most powerful tool, for networking, no question.
Ladies and gentlemen, take a lesson here. You got it right from Carol McManus. Think about it. So when you connect with somebody, it's a relationship. You just met this person. It's like sitting in their living room. So you met them at church. You don't just jump in and start going, blah, 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 this is what I sell. You have to have a warm-up period and earn the right.
Earn the right. There you go.
Yes, because I have people, and someone they'll say, oh, I want to help you with your podcast. And I'll just type back, have you ever seen it? And you'd be surprised how many haven't. I think one out of about 100.
Yeah, that's a scary thing.
You know what? I'm not carrying the conversation further if you haven't even watched one of my 102 podcasts.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in growing and getting better and tips. However, if you don't even know what it is, hats off. So looking back at the 9 years of teaching LinkedIn, besides that, what other mistake are professionals making that they still make today, or that you have a word about?
If you keep yourself and your business the best kept secret in town. And again, that networking, relationships, getting out there, meeting people, connecting with the right people. I mean, there is no magic bullet, whether it's marketing a book, which we'll get to, and we'll talk about books, or whether it's marketing your business or marketing your personal services. You have to put effort into it, and effort doesn't necessarily mean a lot of money. This is the other fear and the issue that I faced a lot with the small and medium-sized businesses, who some think very expansively and some think very controlled and conservatively. I'm trying to think a nice word, conservatively. So they don't want to spend money to make money. And again, I'm using a lot of really tired cliches tonight, so I apologize to your audience. But you do have to invest something. You have to invest resources in order to get your word out there. And if you don't, then you're sort of leaving it to chance for either other people organically to do it for you, or to probably figure out how you're going to close your business down in a couple of years, because that is why a lot of businesses fail, whether they're, restaurants or, small boutique shops, or whether they're Jiffy Lubes, because they don't put the work into it. And you can't just rely on the brand. You can't just rely on word of mouth. Now, all of those are important, but they alone aren't going to do it. So and finding that right solution, marketing is the biggest challenge for everybody. And it always has been, but it used to be very money driven, because if you didn't have a budget for TV and radio, remember those days, Cynthia? If you didn't have a budget for TV and radio, you basically were sunk. That was the philosophy. And then maybe if you were in a different class, like in real estate, you had to have the newspaper budget to be able to advertise your houses in the newspaper. So there's different iterations of that. But again, even if you say, well, I'm going to put all my efforts into social media, that's fine. But how are you going to do that? Are you going to do it yourself? Are you going to pay somebody to do it for you? Are you going to invest in advertising to promote what you're doing? And you can advertise on all of these sites. Are you going to add content and valuable content? Or are you just going to put up funny memes, or just, comment on what other people do? So and let me go to Facebook for a minute, because that's another one where I think has sort of derailed the business community and how to use it. And part of that's Facebook's fault, because they've changed the algorithms and they really make it hard to connect and be seen unless you are spending money. But again, it's a business. I understand that, and I respect that. But you have to learn how to play within their playground. You have to figure out what you are going to do to get to the people you want. And with Facebook, you can manage a very manageable budget, whatever. And I don't care if it's $30 a month or $3,000 a month. You can manage a budget that works for you and be very specific about targeting where that goes, whether it's by zip code or by demographics. They're really good at that, but you have to take some time to do that. So is it all money? Maybe not, but it does take effort. And that's where a lot of people just won't put the time and effort into it, but it works when you do it. Is social media the only place to to promote and market? No, of course not. There's other, park benches still work in some areas, and billboards work in some areas. So it really depends on where you are in the country, who your target market is, what your business is, and how smart you're going to be in how you invest your time and money.
Excellent. Let's talk about the next chapter.
Yeah.
How do you connect with Mark Victor Hansen, the legendary co-creator of Chicken?
Oh my God, Mark and his wife Crystal are just two of the most extraordinary human beings on the face of the earth. This is where I have to tell you, Cynthia, when I met Mark, which was through another person, I really felt like I had fallen into the honeypot. And so the quick story to answer your question, again, it started with a consulting. In fact, it started with somebody that I was working with on the Milford Readers and Writers Festival, who knew another gentleman who was looking for ghostwriters. And I have always been a writer. I did a lot of writing and publishing within my corporate life, which never met the light of day. It was always within the brands and the family. But my avocation has always been writing myself. No matter where I lived in the country, and I've lived all over, I was always writing. I'd always belonged to a writer's group, and I was just always working on my craft. I would attend in my free time. I would attend conferences to improve on my craft. So it was always in my DNA. Mm-hmm. So when she approached me, she says, "Hey, I have a friend. I was just at an event and he's looking for ghostwriters. Do you know anybody who might be interested?" And I thought, well, hell, I know how to put a sentence together, and I have some time now because I'm totally on my own. I'll connect with him and see what happens. And I did know some people that were interested in ghostwriting. So it started doing some ghostwriting, but which quickly evolved into, when he found out what my background was, into more helping with my title was different, but it was basically similar to what I'm doing now. I think I was senior editor. But he was managing the clients, but I was managing the books. So I found the writers, I managed them and the editors, and got the guts of the books written. And again, whether it was fiction or nonfiction, it didn't matter. And it was through him that I met Mark and Crystal, who were starting their brand. And anyway, the details, are unimportant. But what happened was I ended up working for Mark and Crystal in 2022. They launched it in January, and it has been just a real dream since then. It's been a tremendous opportunity because Mark is well known. Anybody who knows Chicken Soup for the Soul and the books that he and Jack Canfield produced together, he retired. They sold that brand a number of years ago, and Mark has continued to write. But Mark is one who, in his deepest place of his heart, really feels everybody should have a book and everybody has a message to put out there to the world. And he really genuinely believes that. So he started a hybrid publishing company to be able to help people get their book to market. So we have been doing ghostwriting, editing, and basically I called myself the shepherd. So my job was to work with the clients like I did with you, Cynthia, work with the writers, supervise the writing, the editing, the layout, the design, and took them right up to launch, and to get their books launched for a successful, Amazon introduction to the world. And then I back away because I'm working with other clients. But that's been my dream job for the past. And it feels like everything I did in my career sort of serendipitously led up to this. And it's the most fun probably that I've had in a very, very long time. And I have become a believer like Mark. I really do. Everybody has a book. It's just a matter, what is that book and what is your legacy? And we have a few clients who really don't even care about publishing. They just want to put the words down on a page as a legacy for their families. It's for their kids and their grandkids and the future generations. And that's a legitimate reason to write a book. So it's a fun ride.
It's funny because my son wants me to write my autobiography, and I've got notebooks and notebooks full, and I look at it and I go, no, I couldn't put that out. No, I couldn't put that out. And he goes, but Mom, you're the only one who has the history of the whole family now. Everyone else is dead. I'm like, oh, so it's on the list.
Well, it's funny. We do biographies for other people, and then some of them are putting their own name on the cover, which makes it an autobiography. And I have to tell you, Cynthia, a lot of people have that fear going into it. But unless you're really, really, truly pulling skeletons and being mean-spirited and negative about it, the fact of the matter is the truth is the truth. And here it goes. This goes back to the crafting of a story. You can tell some pretty unfortunate stories in a family's history, but frame them so that they aren't really quite so negative. For example, there's one that I'm working on right now where the woman was very concerned about, it's really more of a memoir that she's doing. It's not a full-on biography, but she was concerned about talking about her father's abuse as a child, not physical abuse, verbal abuse, and just, you're nothing, you're never going to be anything, those kinds of things that we hear about. And the way we are framing it is that what was unfortunate was that was, number one, the thinking at the time in his generation. She's an older woman, so her father was of an even older generation. That was the thinking of the time, and how a lot of fathers taught their daughters, and they thought in their hearts, they thought they were helping by encouraging you and sort of, prodding you and in their own twisted way, thinking that was positive. So we're finding a way to craft that and turn what could on its surface seem very negative and resentful into perspective of why things happened that way at the time. And she had since come to peace with it. But like you, she was concerned about, well, what's everybody else going to think? And what are the family going to think? And the answer is, it's all in how it's the craft of putting the words in the right order and the sentences in the right order and the spirit and the love in how you put your story out there. And that's a skill that I'm very proud to have worked on and that I can help other people with.
Ooh, that's very interesting. Do you hear that, ladies and gentlemen? Do you have a story in there? Is there something that your generations in the future will not know about unless you tell the story now?
Mm-hmm. And that's how we learn. I mean, think about, and again, this, I don't want to get too philosophical on you, but if you go back in ages, if people hadn't started putting things down, and I don't want to go back as far as the tablets, but in writing, and passing that down from generations to generations. How do we learn? How do we grow? How do we mature? How do we take that knowledge and move it forward? Because, we're not living our lives the way they lived it in the Dark Ages or in the, the Renaissance or even in the 1800s. We're in a different world today, and our world is moving very fast, but it doesn't mean that we can't learn and appreciate what has come before us. And if it's not in the written word somewhere, then it's lost forever, and we can't learn, and we can't grow, and we can't change.
Yeah. So you've done over 100 books now in 4 years.
And we got about 60 in process right now.
So it's over 2 books a month. So what's your system? How do you maintain that pace without burning out?
Well, it's a lot of work, but it's sort of it's an assembly line, because nothing all happens at once. You know from your own experience that you go through the downloading of the information, getting some words on paper, and then you start working it together over a period of a couple of months to try to, make sure you get the story right, and that and then you go into the once you've got the manuscript in a shape that you're proud of, then you move on to, okay, now we have to get serious about making sure the spelling and the punctuation and the grammar and all that stuff is right. That's what copy editors do. And by the way, there's 2 very different skill sets. My writers on the front end are the creative. You can give them a story, and they can, and fiction in particular, but even with nonfiction, and they can put those words on a page out of seemingly nothing or very little. But a copy editor who is hardwired very differently can't do that in a million years. But what they can do is they can read a manuscript and find every single mistake and fix it. So on the front end, I don't even ask the writers to worry about that, because usually they're terrible at spelling and punctuation. And that's just not their skill set, because they're the finger painters. They're out there, creating the joy, if you will. And then we have the fixers on the back end. So the assembly line is different skill sets. And then once you get to that point, then you need that graphics person who has the vision of what the cover is going to be and what the interior layout should look like. From yours, we worked very hard on that to get it the way you wanted. And those beautiful covers, speak to what the Black Pearl and Savannah Seas are. And those were labors of love, and they really speak to the story. And then we move on to the practical side of getting the book published. So it's really, there's different things happening at once. And when you get to launch, how intense it was when we were getting ready to launch. So when I'm doing a launch, that usually for 2 or 3 days, right around the launch, that just everything else is eclipsed, because it takes that kind of concentration. So it works. And having a good team to work with. I mean, we have a good team of writers and editors. Mark and Crystal are very, very actively involved in the business. And we just all work together.
Charlotte Frost. Hello. She says,
hey, Charlotte. Oh my God, there's a name from the past.
Yes.
Charlotte, you worked with me. I worked with you when we were with that predecessor that I talked about.
Yes. Fun. And Charlotte's recently written 7 children's books.
Oh, congratulations.
It's the Frog series. I actually have the whole series right over here. I pull them out. But since it's your show, what's the biggest myth you've had at best for aspiring athletes when they walk through the door? Like, what do they have in their mind that doesn't work? Or how can you inspire them to get their story out?
Well, are you talking about the production of the book or the success of the book? Because that's sort of, my head was going in 2 different directions.
Let's go with aspiring first, and then go to.
Okay. It's really digging deep, because most people don't wake up every day saying, I think I'm going to write a book today. It's a process. There are some, there are some who do that, but again, a lot of our clients are really very, very successful, busy business people and professionals. They don't have time to sit at a desk or sit at a computer and punch out a book. So teasing that information out of them and getting the vision of what their message to the world is. What is the message that you want to get out there? Now, in a nonfiction book where you're talking about your business success, I'm going to say it's a little bit easier because it's more specific and it's more granular. For those who gravitate more to the fiction market, it's really taking what are your three key beliefs and what do you want people to take away from this, and then crafting a story around that echoes them and builds from, is inspired by their experience, but not necessarily their story. And that's particularly important for people who really have no interest in putting their story out there, but they want the lessons of their story to be learned. So we take it and we run with it in the fiction space. So I would say having that fear, that anxiety, that excitement, and that commitment to try to tease that together so that we can actually create a book. Because, you know, I will be honest with you, most people who aren't writers and haven't, you know, spent their time like me going to writers groups and writing for years, have an idea, but they're lucky when they put it on paper to fill 10 pages, because which is not a book, but they have a beginning. They shouldn't be discouraged by that. They have a start, and then we just have to build it from there. So it is sort of like dumping the Legos out on the floor and then figuring out how you're going to build a castle. It's a little bit of that.
So you've had the front row seat to hundreds of people's why they wrote the book, but what separates the books that create a real impact and grow businesses from the ones that just sit on the shelf?
Your listeners are not going to like my answer to this.
It's okay.
It's the hardest part of creating a book. The work starts when the book is done. And it's that big M word, that nasty M word. It's called marketing, promotion, advertising, whatever label you want to put on it. But I'll put it under the marketing umbrella. There is a lot of competition out there, and a lot of people creating books. And as self-publishing became more and more popular and more acceptable, there's a lot of people putting out books on Amazon every day. They aren't necessarily, you know, they're not going to be in Barnes and Noble, but 80% of the public buys their books on Amazon. So that's where your real competition is. So it's putting the work in to let people know that the book is there. So you have to market yourself. You have to get out there and promote yourself, do book signings. You have to do the legwork. And I don't care whether you're self-publishing, whether you're working with a hybrid publisher, or whether Simon & Schuster signed you. If you're one of the big houses, you still have to do the marketing because it's your name on the cover. And putting that effort into it, and not just for the launch. Successful marketing is a sustained effort over a long period of time. And then, you know, if it's a really good book, it will catch its own wave, if you will, and then it does become organic, but that doesn't happen automatically. And what's really sad, Cynthia, is some of the best written books out there that I've seen are lucky to have a half a dozen reviews and probably very, very few sales, because reviews usually reflect the number of sales. And there are others that honestly aren't particularly wonderful books, but they're successful because the author put the effort into marketing it. So they've convinced everybody it's a great book. Yes. So you really have to realize that the book is only phase one, and the hard work starts after that. But you know what? It's back to what we were talking about, small businesses. Let's say your family had your grandmother on both sides. Your mother and you have been antique collectors for years, and you decided, hey, I'm going to retire from my job. I'm going to open an antique shop in town. Great idea. But if all you do is throw your antiques into a storefront and then you sit there and wait for people to come in, probably nothing's going to happen, or it's going to take a very, very, very long time. So the principles are the same. If you're going to promote yourself, and a book is a promotion, you have to work at it.
Good analogy. I'm going to do a shout out to Kevin. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate your support. It's always nice to see you. Have any book launches that went out, didn't go as you planned, like any disasters or funny stories you have?
Actually, no. We have such a system for our book launches that we really work with our clients, you know, right up to this is what you need to do. This is when you promote it. This is when you have to tell people to buy, and they don't have to buy a paperback if they don't want to spend the money. Just buy a Kindle, just so that it will boost your sales and get your attention, because everything on Amazon, and this isn't just books, everything on Amazon is controlled by algorithms, and it's you know, what they promote and what they support and what they Amazon will become your best friend if you do the front work to get the book going. And then once you reach 75 reviews on a book, once you have X number of sales, and once they show that there's momentum, then they'll start showing you as a, hey, if you're interested in Cynthia's book, maybe you'd like Carol's book. But they won't do that until you make it happen.
Oops. So ladies and gentlemen, if you can get out there and please write me a review on Amazon. Savannah C's Maiden Voyage. It's the first one of a series of 7. And you can catch all of my other ones too. They're very good. They're all written by different authors. And Black Pearl, A Love Letter to the Ocean. It's fabulous. I love it. And it's also available in Spanish. And they're both on Audible. So be really quick and then jump into Amazon. Because now she just told me 75. My target's been too low. So I'm going to reach out. Reach out and touch somebody.
And that will help you not only with people recognizing it and say, oh, well, there's people that are interested in this book, and then they'll read the reviews. And by the way, don't panic if somebody doesn't give you a great review. You don't actually want all 5 stars reviews, because because it looks disingenuous. Yeah, I mean, we're human beings. We're critical. That's the way we're hardwired. A lot of people just can't give a 5-star review. They'll give you a 4. So when it's all measured together, you come up with a 4.3 or a 4.6 or a 4.7. You do want to stay above the 4.0. I will say that. You really want to. That should be a bar. But don't worry about not getting all 5 stars. But that will not only help other readers make a decision, but it will also help Amazon help you. And that's, again, Amazon is the 800-pound gorilla out there. We can't deny them.
Oh, that's a good tip. And I'm glad you told me, because I actually said, if you didn't like the book and you're not giving me 5 stars, don't give me one.
Well, you got to change your script a little bit.
Thank you for the lesson. I appreciate it very much. So with all the books you've helped people bring into the world, have you written a book? Do you have a book out there that we can
it's so funny. For the past 4 years, I run 2 writers groups in my spare time. That's my avocation now. And they're all publishing, because I worked so hard to help them get published. And I have 2 mysteries and I have published 2 nonfiction books, one of which is being rewritten right now. And then I have 2 mysteries, which are completed and just really need a really deep edit. And then they can go to layout. So when our writers group, because I bring them together at Christmas time, when we did our holiday party, I made a declaration to them. I said, this is the year that all 3 of these books are going to get published. I promise you. So that is one of my goals, to come back to my own writing, because am I aspiring to be John Grisham or James Patterson? No way. But I do have some good stuff that I think people would enjoy reading. So that's my personal goal for this year. But thank you for asking that. So I'll let you know when you're ready to go.
I love it. Yes. I'll definitely give you reviews. What's your favorite book of all time?
My favorite book of all time. Oh God, that's an impossible question. I probably have to put The Alchemist very high on the list. But I have to tell you, I have a new one. And if you don't mind me doing a promotion for one of our recent clients,
please do.
We just published a book in November. It's called Our Moment. In fact, I might. It is called Our Moment. The author is Michael Clark. Michael is a Brit who happens to live in Dubai, but he is an AI expert. I can real quick read this. He's an author and industry pioneer who believes the world's greatest untapped resource is human potential. From leading digital transformation in Fortune 500 boardrooms to advising governments and smart cities, he has dedicated his career to reimagining data, AI, and education. And today he helps industries and individuals prepare for the next economy, unlocking what people can truly become. So that's Michael as a human being. The book that he wrote, and I was really the developmental editor helping him. He did the writing on this, and then I coached him on this. But this book is something that we're all grappling with today. It's about artificial intelligence, but in a very different framework. It's an allegory. And the main character is a young boy. You're not really sure how old he is, maybe 15, 16 years old, but he's going through life searching for his identity, and his identity is disappearing because of the way data is being managed. And so in the course of the book, Michael built in different characters who coach him and teach him and bring him to a new awareness of how we as human beings today in the 21st century can control our data and really play nicely in the sandbox with artificial intelligence. It's an extraordinary book. It really is new. I think it's going to be one of these slow burn books. I think it's going to make a lot of people different. But if you go and look at this one on Amazon and look at the reviews that have already been written, he only has a few so far. But if you look at those reviews, it will say much more eloquently how strongly I believe in this book. So this is going to be the next time you ask me that question, I'm going to say our moment. Because I think it's something that's going to change the world in an area that is really frightening to a lot of people right now, meaning artificial intelligence.
Yes, excellent. That's the big buzzword of the day is AI, and I can't wait to pick that book up and read it. I will put it up on my list, moving it up to the top 10 of the list.
There you go. There you go. But it can't just sit on the nightstand. You actually have to read it.
I'm currently reading 2, as a matter of fact. Yes. Best business advice you've ever received?
Best business advice I've ever received. Don't stop till the game is over, because it's never over. That's the ... It's never over. So many people, and I saw this in my consulting practice, so many people give up when they're on the 10-yard line. They've worked so hard to get, I'm using football metaphors, to get down to that point where they're ready to score, and then something either stops them, whatever. It could be they run out of financial resources because they either ran out or they mismanaged them. They get scared. They have problems in the business. They don't like dealing with people. I've had people say to me, I'd love running a business if I didn't have to deal with people. So guess what? That's the world we're in. But that to me was the best advice I was ever given. And it's what I've tried to pass on to my clients over the years is you got to stick to it, and make sure you get to the finish line, because there is a finish line. And along with that, I would say the other big advice is always, and Cynthia, you're living proof of this. You got to dream big. You have to really, really put your aspirations and your goals out there, and don't keep them to yourself. Talk about them. You don't have to say, well, my goals for 2026 are 1, 2, and 3. It's more just circulate what your intention is, what you're thinking, what's in your heart, what's in your mind. Say, what if, I could, or what do you think about this idea? And when you put those little sprinkles out into the universe, I got to tell you, they manifest themselves in really amazing ways, because somehow people grasp those little sprinkles and they call you back sometimes months later and say, Cynthia, you said something to me 6 months ago, and I was talking to this guy, and I need to connect you with them because I think you're exactly what he needs or what he's looking for. And it's like, all of a sudden things begin to happen, but you can't keep it to yourself. You can't, because we live in a world of people who help people. This goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning of the show, Cynthia. It's all about relationships. And not using people, but celebrating people and always thinking about them first. What can I do for you versus what can you do for me? You can't come at relationships with a selfish motive. That will come later. That's why the whole LinkedIn thing we were talking about, you said it's so beautiful. You have to earn the right to sell me something. And I'm open to buying. I was in the sales industry for a number of years. But you never sell a house. You help people make a buying decision to buy a house. Totally different shift in mindset.
That's why you were so successful. You're already on this.
Yeah, but I didn't sell how I won't.
But you're in the environment.
I was in the space, and I was teaching people how to do it. So,
Glenn Morshar likes to say, you keep throwing out your boomerangs, and they come back to you eventually. You never know when, but just like I say, five a day, just because you never know, and you don't just like. Don't think, oh, I found this person on LinkedIn and I'm going to reach out to them and then wait. No, as Carol said, you have to keep going. Don't stop before you get to the finish line.
Yeah. And I find some of the best doors open when you use curiosity to your advantage. It's when you ask questions and you really invest in people, as opposed to, like you said, starting with me, I don't care is what the other person's thinking, when I have this nice smile on their face going, okay, how do I end this conversation, walk away gracefully? you know,
Killing me softly.
yeah.
Let's put up ways that people can reach out and reach Carol. Let's get her through her LinkedIn if you don't know it and you haven't found it yet. Carol McManus, here she is, linkedin.com, Carol McManus. And there's some very good information in there. And we've got her on Facebook, facebook.com, Carol
I have to
McManus.
admit, I'm not as active on Facebook, but if you do message me, I will see that. I'm not one of these people who's on Facebook every day.
LinkedIn is her number one preference. And then you've got Carol Mark Victor Hansen Library.com.
Yeah, and that's the direct way to get me. That's my direct email. And if you have any questions, if you want to know about what we're doing at the library, I can certainly explain that to you. I'm not here to sell that. That's not, that's not appropriate. But I do know a lot about the publishing industry. And I've had people reach out and say, hey, I really want to do my book myself. How do I do that? And I'm happy to point you in the right direction.
So, Carol, as we wrap up, what do you hope your legacy will be?
Oh, golly. You ask great questions, Cynthia. What do I want my legacy to be?
Thank you.
I think I put, I've never really thought about that or put it into words, but what popped into my mind was she always tried her best to help me and others first. That's what I want the legacy to be, because I really do try to practice that every day. And again, it's come back to me 1,000-fold. So I think that's it. I think it's there, that I'm there for others first.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today on this informative talk with Carol McManus. So please share this out. Send it out to people who might not have thought about writing their book yet, or maybe it's you who want to get your legacy out there and let people know what happened to you, or maybe that little book that's been percolating in there all these years. Now you have a great connection. So share this out, and the Cynthia Manion Show will be on next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I look forward to seeing you there or in one of the replays. And if you have nothing else to do, please go ahead and write that Amazon review for Black Pearl, Love Letter to the Ocean, and Savannah Seas, Maiden Voyage. Okay, thank you. And if you catch me at one of my readings, I'll be happy to sign them for you. Okay, love you all. Make good decisions. And
Hey,
Frank Miles, hey there. There's a voice from my past from LinkedIn, as a matter of fact. How you doing, buddy? Give me a holler. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Thank you, Carol. You're amazing.